Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you for this session again. I want to point out to you the different scales and also freehand drawings. Now, we have done up so far the career possibilities, the type of instruments that we will use for engineering graphics design. We also did the line qualities, type A, type B and type C lines that you will get, and then also different types of lines. If you go to type A lines, most of the times it will be continuous. There are some center lines for sewerage and those type of things on civil drawings. If you go to type B lines, we've said that there will be center lines, there will be long and short chain lines, in other words, and then also dash lines, and also in some cases continuous lines with the quality of a type B line. And then in type C, most of the times we will have only a continuous line in the case of type C lines. Alright, so now we're going over to scales and freehand sketches. Now, often we will go to a site in the case of civil, or you will go to someone's premises, and then you have to measure and do some freehand sketches in terms of that. And then also you can get, to a great extent, maybe a concept that you want to draw neat on a drawing paper and a drawing table, but of course you just want to redraw and finally make short sketches, and that's where we get to scale of drawings, and then also we get to the quality of freehand drawings itself, so that if you go back to the office, then you will be able to know and to see exactly what the concept was in the process. Right, so freehand sketches is very important for you to understand, and freehand sketches is also important to understand in terms of transferring the information on site towards an area where you go to for a specific drawing board and have to redraw this part. Now, at some stages you're going to change some of that. You also have to do dimensioning onto that freehand sketch, so that you know how large the building was, how wide the object was, and where it has to fit in, for instance, in between a specific area itself. Alright, so for scaling we need to draw on a smaller scale. You can imagine if you need to draw a car, for instance, you can't have a big page like for the car itself, so you're going to reduce everything to a smaller scale, and then from the smaller scale you will basically draw those things in. Alright, so in some cases when drawings are all objects, we're drawing, it might be either too small or it might be either too big, and you have to enlarge this area. For instance, if you should draw the parts of a wristwatch or a cell phone or something like that, it's going to be very tiny and very small. You've got an A3 page for that, so you can enlarge those things. And if you need to draw the wheel of a train, for instance, or a tow bar or something like that, then you have to make those things smaller because it has to fit in on a A3 page. So therefore, yes, often we get that we have to reduce something, make something smaller. We have to also sometimes make something larger. Now, that's what we call, that's known as scaling. Why scale something? In other words, scale something smaller, scale something larger to extent. All right. And that scaling should also always appear as on a different ratio. In other words, you will see that it's 1:5 or 1:7 or 1:8 or whatever the case might be, which means it's 7 times smaller, it's 8 times smaller. It can also be 2:1, 2:7, sorry, 2:1, 5:1, 7:1, which means it's 7 times larger, being drawn 7 times larger than what it is. So the ratio will also be given to you. Alright, so this is the ratio 1:1. That means it's the same size. If you need to draw a drawing on that part. If you go to 2:1, it means it's 2 times larger than what it is in real life. And if you go to 1:2, it's 2 times smaller than what it is in real life. Alright, so that's what scaling is all about. There you can see the difference. There's an object, and the object has been drawn to scale 2:1, which you can see on the left hand side of your screen. It's much larger. 1:1 is the actual size, and then 1:2 is the smaller size that has been drawn to. Right, so in that case it points out to you that it's 2 times smaller than what it is in real life, 2 times larger what it is in real life. Alright, so if it's 1 to 2, obviously you divide by 2. If it's 1 to 5, you divide by 5. If it's 2 to 1, it's multiplied by 2. If it's 7 to 1, it's multiplied by 7 times larger, in other words. But now this is a very important part. Although you want to draw the drawing smaller or larger, you still will always point out the real dimension. In other words, you can't just make the dimensions larger now all of a sudden, simply because of the fact that it's still 40 millimeters. It's just, for your eyes, better visible, but it's still the same dimension. So if you need to make something which has been drawn much larger, then you can still going to use the same dimensions as what it is in real life. And the same with that. If you go smaller, for a house, for a motor car, for something large, in other words, you will put the real dimensions in millimeters, so that whether, despite the fact that it's drawn smaller, you will still know what the real dimension is for that. Right. Now scales normally runs in between 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 and so on, or maybe 2 to 1, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 50 to 1, or whatever the case might be. But that's not a norm that we will have to work with 2 and 5 and 10s and so on. It's recommended that we will work with that, but obviously we can work with 1 to 45 to fit it in onto our page, for instance. Alright, so this is now with scalings, and this is what we need to know with scalings. Now we have to draw something, and we make a freehand drawing of that. What are the principles that we can apply when drawing a freehand drawing? When we are on site, for instance, and we have to get some information on site on what the scales is and what the size is and all those type of things and so on. Alright, so still we're going to use the same dimensions, the real dimensions. So if we are on a site and we have to build 10 meters from the side of the fence, for instance, we're still going to use a dimension of 10 meters from the side of the fence, and we're still keeping it as meters, showing it in millimeters, in other words. And then if we have to draw freehand, all of a sudden it becomes a new skill now. We haven't got the guides of T-squares and set squares. We don't have got the abilities and the capabilities of what we have if we have to run freehand drawings and so on. So what we can do according to that, to be accurate and we have to make ourselves familiar with guidelines that we can use. In other words, if we take a look at the legs and the size of the legs of this table itself, if we go parallel to the sides, you will see that that last leg looks a bit shorter than what it is in real life. So therefore we will have to have a good proportion of what is going on in terms of this. Although that makes it look as if it's much further away from the drawing, still we have to think about the proportion that we're working in. And then also the line quality, still we're going to use line quality of type A lines and B lines and C lines if we do this type of drawings. And then also most of the times we'll use a softer pencil, so we will go to the H range, or maybe an H3 or to the B range, maybe a B1 or a B2. The H2 or a H1 pencil or a HB pencil will be fine with freehand sketches. We will try to draw the lines in one movement. In other words, we don't feather the lines. It was having lines and lines and lines attached to each other to make up one big line. We will make use of one solid line, and we will start and end with that line if we need to draw the lines. Also, always draw the lines away from you, so that it's much easier to pull it away from you rather than push towards you. And then if you draw a freehand line, to make it going straight, it's like cutting with a scissor without a guideline, is get yourself a point and work towards the point. In other words, draw a line towards that further point, and then that will help you to draw the line parallel. Right, and then also use pre-drawn lines sometimes to draw the final drawing. So if you don't want to mess it up, maybe not having an eraser on site itself, then you draw the lines light, and then once you're satisfied with it, you can draw it in as a dark line itself. Let's say, for instance, we have to draw a table like this one over here. We will get the start position of the table, and then from there on we stretch it out towards the left and right, giving some sort of perspective view of the table itself. And then we start building in the lines from out those lines extending outwards in order to find ourselves the endpoints and the end positions of the table legs and also the rest of the drawing itself. So therefore we will use guidelines, and those guidelines will help us extending the lines. Once we're done with the guidelines, we can keep the lines dark so that it stands out much more easier. A second method, of course, what you can use is by using a ruler. And of course, if it's saying freehand, you're not going to use the ruler to draw the line. You're not going to put the pencil next to the ruler and draw the line, because then it's not freehand anymore. But still, you can use your little finger and sliding your little finger towards the side of the ruler in order to get some sort of steady jig or a steady guide that you can use then to draw lines with. All right, and then the third method. This is a very important method I want to emphasize, because if you do the pat, you will see with the pat you also have to show this method, and you have to indicate this method of doing this. All right, so there we go with the drawing. We can frame that drawing. We have to redraw that drawing, but larger, to a scale of 2:1. So now we frame the drawing. We can measure, that's basically, let's say for instance 7 millimeters to 11 millimeters by 7 by 11. And then of course we can subdivide the areas into smaller portions. So get a grid inside this little drawing that we will have to draw. And now I can enlarge. Let's say for instance we take the 7 and multiply it by 2, so we're going to end up with 14, and the 11 multiplied by 2 gives you 22. So we're going to draw a large block. And then of course if there's, let's say for instance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 increments in between, we're going to have the 6 increments over here as well. And let's say for instance there's, I don't count now, but let's say for instance there's 10 increments in between or 11 increments in here. We're going to still use the 11 increments over here, but this is now larger. So therefore we can't use the dimensions of this one. We have to double the dimensions because of we using a scale of 2:1. And now we can use the grid by saying this stands in the center over here going downwards. So this little man will start in the center to the left and to the right. The head of this little man is not exactly from side to side of the circle. It gives you about a portion of a 1/3 that's remaining. So therefore if we keep a 1/3 remaining area over here, we can say we can draw the circle in that part for the head, for the shoulders. It goes straight to the center for the legs itself, and then goes upwards again. And according to the ratio that we will have here, we can apply the same ratio over here on this side over here. This is a more official method of drawing freehand drawings that we can use in the process. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is basically scales, enlarging something, making it smaller to fit on a piece of paper. And then also that is also the freehand lines that we worked on, and the methods, the 3 different methods that we can use in drawing freehand lines. And of course always apply the principles of line quality, type A, type B and type C lines. And then also what does the line say? In other words, it's a center line, it's a long and short dash line, it's a short dash line, it's a longer dash line for contour lines and those type of things and so on. So that is basically the content. That's what I want to say to you about freehand lines. And I trust that you will be able to draw a few freehand drawings in class using the ruler, using a grid page, using a free method of lines extending towards an endpoint in order to help you drawing freehand lines. I really appreciate your attendance. I hope that this session helped you a lot. God bless. Thank you.